Hi, I'm Bill Simpson, and this instructional video is a Vancouver Community College project. For the video, I'll be talking about installing a tiled shower bench. For the example, a product called Better Bench will be used and will be covered with a limestone tile. The person demonstrating the installation is named Greg, and he's a contractor that's allowed me to video him during the installation. On the left is a photo of the finished bench, and on the right is a Better Bench that provides the structure. This is a list of material and tools you'll need. Depending on the type of tiles you use, the tools may vary slightly. I've broken this presentation into 4 different days so you can simply jump ahead to the part that's of interest to you. In day 1, I'll cover the installation of the Better Bench. Day 2 will be the tile layout and installation. Day 3 will be the grouting, and day 4 will be the sealing of the tile. This bench can be installed before or after you've actually tiled the shower walls. In our case, we decided to do it after. What's taken place so far is we decided what the height of the bench should be. Then Greg's measured up from the floor to that bottom of the bench, and then he's taken a level and has drawn a line across. He held the bench in place after that and marked where the holes are going to be drilled. He then drilled the holes. In our case, he came across some framing, and so he had to change the drill bit to a smaller one, so it was just a pilot hole for the actual screw itself. Here, Greg is screwing the bench into the wall, but before he puts the bench in place, he actually fills the holes with adhesive caulking. He then puts a continuous bead of caulking around the top edge of the bench, and this gets pressed against the tile of the shower wall. This will prevent any water from leaking through into the wall. Greg is now preparing the sand and cement mortar mix. This is not the same as the thin set mortar used for the tiling. It's very important that this is a dry mix and it needs to be very stiff. So when Greg finds he needs a little more water, he controls the amount of water by just squeezing a little bit out of the sponge. The Better Bench has now been filled up with the mortar, and what Greg is doing here is just packing it down, and he's trying to slope it from the back towards the front. And that's so when the tiling has been completed, any water that gets on the tile will just drain off. Once you've packed the mortar in, now take your float and just make sure that you make it nice and smooth, and with the grade coming from the back down to the front. Now once you've got it smooth, take your level and check to make sure you got the proper slope. If the line is probably halfway through the bubble, then it's probably okay. So check a couple of different points and just make sure you got the proper slope. So Greg added just a little bit more water to this mortar just to make it a little moister, just to make it easier to work with. And then he puts his float up underneath the bench itself, and he takes his trowel and he just goes and tries to squeeze all the rest of the mortar in the front. So once you've filled in the front and you've taken the float and made it nice and smooth, you take the trowel and just clean it up around the edges. And then all you have to do is sit and wait till the next day, and then it should be settled and ready to tile. Now it's time for the layout of the tiles. We originally wanted to use one large tile for the top, but it just didn't work and we had to come up with a different plan. The layout you choose will likely be based on the size of the tile you're using and the look you're going for. Even though your layout will likely be different, there are some things you might want to consider, so I suggest you have a look at our plan first. Imagine this diagram as a bird's eye view looking down at the top of the bench. The red outline would be the shape of the Better Bench structure. The gray lines are the 4 tile pieces, 2 large triangles and 2 smaller pieces. When determining the size of each tile, take in consideration the gap between each of the tiles and between the tiles and the shower walls. In our case, it is an 1/8 inch gap. The other thing to consider is how you want to finish the front of the bench. We're planning to have the top tiles hang over the front edge, so when the bench gets wet, the water will run off. The overhang distance will be just the thickness of the front facing tile. Now look just below that. Let's look at the front tile itself. This diagram is the top edge of the tile. We're going to be doing a 45-degree angle cut so the tile will be parallel with the shower wall. As it is easy to make a mistake in the measurement and cutting of this tile, I suggest you cut the 45-degree angle first, Then go back to your bench and hold the tile in place while you mark the length. I'll show you that in the video in a second. So here's what I meant, just taking that front tile and line it up to exactly where you want to have it, and then just mark the center. And once you've marked it, then you can go ahead and take it away and cut it. Here's one of the limestone tiles being cut at a 45-degree angle. After cutting the tile, it's time to just sand off all the edges that are going to be exposed, just to make them nice and smooth. So the next stage here is just a little bit of hand sanding, again just to clean it up and make sure we have no rough edges. Now it's time to lay the tiles. The thin-set mortar mix is applied to both the back of the tile and on the mounting surface. To make sure the tiles stay in position, 1x2s that have been cut to length are being set up under the tiles. Now it's time to apply some mortar to the second tile. As you can see, the mortar on the back of the tile is being applied with a trowel having a 3/8 inch groove. After these tiles are put in place, they are pressed against the bench to make sure that they're nice and tight. I'm going to be kicking Greg into high gear now so we can finish up fairly quickly. So right now he's just applying the rest of the mortar to the top of the bench, and then he's going to be laying the tiles. So he makes sure he carefully lays them out and tries to line them up, and checking to make sure he's still got the angle, and he's pressing down as well too. So he's tapping it and making sure it stays in place. And the next thing he does is he comes along and starts to clean it up. So he's making sure he's cleaned up all the grooves and all that sort of stuff. And then the last thing he wants to do is he's going to make sure that he keeps those tiles in the right places. So he's going to put spacers in there. So it's going to be holding tiles and spacing them at the right location. Then he takes a sponge and cleans it all up, so it's going to be nice and clean for the next day when he's finished. I'm going to be rushing Greg through this part as well. So he's put some grout on there, and he takes his float and he makes sure he gets it in between each of the tiles and between the tiles and the shower walls. There's also an opening at the base of the bench, and he makes sure that's filled. Once he does that, he cleans up all the extra grout, and then he just leaves it to dry for the next day. The sealer is now being applied to the bench. So once it's applied, you let it dry for about 5 minutes, and then you take a clean cloth and wipe it off. Make sure you do wipe it off though. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video, and good luck with your project. I'm Bill Simpson, and bye for now.